Florida's plan to unleash an army of snake-eating predators sounded ridiculous until the Everglades began to unravel. Burmese pythons, multiplying from a handful of Hurricane Andrew escapees and abandoned pets, exploded into an unstoppable force, erasing nearly 99% of mammals in some areas and turning a $31.5 billion ecosystem into a cautionary tale. But when science answered with the eastern indigo snake, a species feared for its prowess against venomous rivals, the outcome stunned even experts. Did this bold bet on nature's original hunters work, or did it just change the rules of a hidden war? August 24, 1992. Hurricane Andrew slams into South Florida with winds topping 165 miles per hour. In Homestead, warehouses packed with exotic reptiles stand directly in the path of the storm. By dawn, the roofs are gone. Concrete blocks crumple, metal doors twist, and inside, hundreds of cages, many holding Burmese pythons, are shattered. Insurance records from that week describe total loss of livestock across multiple facilities, but the details vanish into the chaos. Paperwork is buried under debris, and owners, some never to return, leave behind what the storm could not destroy. Wildlife officers later recall seeing crates blown open, snakes missing, and the marshes eerily silent except for the sound of rain. No one can say for certain how many pythons fled into the wild that night. There is no official tally, no list of names or numbers. But in the weeks that follow, field biologists and local residents report strange sightings. Large patterned snakes gliding through roadside canals and overgrown lots. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission logs dozens of calls, but with so much devastation, tracking a few missing reptiles is not a priority. The focus is on human lives, rebuilding homes, and restoring power. Amid the wreckage, the escaped snakes slip unnoticed into the tangled wetlands at the edge of the city. In later interviews, retired officers and herpetologists describe the aftermath as a turning point. They remember how the Homestead area's reptile trade had grown in the years before Andrew, with breeders and importers crowding warehouses full of non-native species. When the storm hit, it wasn't just one facility. Multiple businesses lost their entire collections overnight. The exact inventory is lost, but the consensus among experts is clear. Andrew's destruction scattered an unknown number of Burmese pythons into an ecosystem that had never seen a predator like this before. This was not the only source. Over the years, pet owners would quietly release unwanted snakes into the wild, compounding the problem. But the chaos of August 1992 remains the moment most biologists point to, the silent dispersal that seeded the Everglades with a new apex predator. The snakes, built for stealth and survival, found endless cover in the flooded sawgrass and mangrove forests. There were no fences, no barriers, and no one left to notice as the first wave of escapees vanished into the green. In the shadow of disaster, a different kind of crisis was set in motion, one that would take decades to reveal its true scale. In the years after the first Burmese pythons vanished into the Everglades, their numbers multiplied with astonishing speed. Field biologists studying the region's tangled wetlands began to realize they weren't dealing with a handful of escapees, but a population explosion. By the late 2000s, estimates from the U.S. Geological Survey placed the number of wild pythons somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000, an almost unimaginable figure for a snake that had never been seen here before the 1990s. The secret behind this runaway growth lies in the python's biology. A single female can lay up to 100 eggs at a time, and she does it every year. The eggs are buried in hidden nests deep in the undergrowth, protected by the female's coiled body. When the hatchlings emerge, they're already nearly 2 feet long and perfectly camouflaged, ready to slip into the maze of sawgrass and cypress roots. In the wilds of South Florida, with its endless cover and mild winters, survival rates soar compared to the python's native range. The Everglades offer almost everything these snakes need. There are no natural predators large enough to threaten adult pythons. Warm temperatures let them stay active year-round, and the region's seasonal floods create a shifting network of channels and islands, ideal for ambush hunters that can swim as well as they crawl. Unlike many invaders, pythons aren't limited by food. They eat almost anything: birds, mammals, even alligators. Each year, as the breeding season returns, thousands of eggs add to the swelling ranks. Researchers tracking python nests have documented how quickly numbers can spiral out of control. One well-studied female, tagged near Naples, produced more than 80 eggs in a single clutch. Multiply that by hundreds or thousands of breeding females, and the math becomes overwhelming. Even with natural losses to predators, disease, or starvation, the sheer volume of hatchlings ensures that the population keeps growing. This reproductive power, combined with the python's stealth and adaptability, has created a perfect storm in the Everglades. Every attempt to estimate the true scale comes with a warning: most snakes are never seen. Camouflage and secretive habits make detection almost impossible, even for experienced field teams. The result is an invisible army, tens or hundreds of thousands of apex predators spreading outward from their original strongholds, changing the landscape with every new generation. Night surveys in the Everglades once meant the flash of raccoon eyes along the levees and the rustle of marsh rabbits darting through sawgrass. Today, the silence is nearly complete. Scientific teams returning to old transects after the turn of the millennium recorded numbers that seemed impossible. Raccoons, once so common they were considered a nuisance, had vanished by over 99%. Opossum sightings dropped by nearly as much, down 98.9%. Bobcats, the marsh's shadowy hunters, were reduced by more than 4 out of every 5. Marsh rabbits, a staple of the ecosystem and a food source for predators and people alike, were nearly wiped out. In some areas, deer sightings fell by over 90%. The numbers, drawn from years of systematic field surveys, painted a picture of collapse so stark that even seasoned biologists struggled to believe it. For the Miccosukee and Seminole stewards who have called these wetlands home for generations, the change is not just statistical, it is personal. Elders remember a time when you could drive the Tamiami Trail at dusk and see rabbits crowding the roadside, and when the sound of night belonged to the chorus of frogs and the soft movement of mammals in the grass. Now, they speak of empty waterways and the absence of tracks in the mud. Traditional stories that once taught children about the abundance of the marsh have become reminders of what's been lost. Some tribal land managers describe the Everglades as wounded, a living system with its heart cut out. Biologists and tribal observers alike use the same word: silent. The collapse did not come with a roar, but with a gradual, almost invisible thinning. Each year, fewer animals returned to the live traps. Each season, fewer tracks appeared along the banks. For a landscape that supports an ecosystem valued at more than $30 billion, this unraveling is not just an environmental crisis, but a cultural and economic one as well. The emptiness spreads outward, affecting everything from water quality to tourism, from hunting traditions to the very sense of place that ties people to the land. The field data leaves little room for doubt. The Everglades food web, once intricate and resilient, now bears the scars of a silent invasion. With so many native mammals and birds gone or diminished, the marshes have become a stage emptied of their original cast. What remains is a landscape haunted by absence, a place where the quiet itself has become a warning. A Burmese python can reach 20 feet in length and weigh more than 200 pounds, a predator larger than anything native to the Florida wetlands. Field biologists have documented these giants swallowing full-grown deer, their jaws unhinging to engulf prey nearly their own weight. One record holder, measured at 18 feet and 215 pounds, was found with the remains of an adult white-tailed deer inside its stomach. Another, nearly as long, had consumed a 6-foot alligator whole. These are not isolated incidents. Trail cameras, hunting guides, and research teams have collected dozens of photographs and first-hand accounts. Pythons draped across levee roads, coiled in the reeds, or stretched out along canal banks with the unmistakable bulge of a recent meal. The python's physical power is matched only by its stealth. Its skin, patterned in brown and gold, blends perfectly with the dappled light of the marsh. Muscles coil beneath the scales, ready to strike, and when they do, the impact is immediate. In one documented case, a python ambushed a feeding alligator, coiling around the reptile's torso and squeezing until the gator's movements slowed, then stopped. Sometimes the outcome is reversed. Alligators have been found with pythons gripped in their jaws, the two apex predators locked in a silent, deadly contest. But more often, the snake prevails, swallowing its rival whole and vanishing into the grass. The Everglades were once ruled by native hunters, panthers, bobcats, and alligators. Now, the python sits at the top of the food chain, unchecked by any natural enemy. Researchers have tracked the spread of these giants from the southernmost marshes into new territory each year. Their range expands as adults establish new breeding grounds and their offspring disperse across the wetlands. The consequences ripple outward. Prey animals vanish, and the balance that once defined the ecosystem is thrown into chaos. No other invasive species in North America has so completely rewritten the rules of predation. The python's size, appetite, and adaptability have turned it into a biological force, one capable of swallowing not just individual animals, but entire populations. As the giants multiply, the need for control grows urgent. Each new record-breaking capture is a reminder of what's at stake, an ecosystem now shaped by the appetite of a predator that was never meant to be here. Every summer, the Florida Python Challenge transforms the Everglades into a battleground. Hundreds of hunters, weekend thrill seekers, seasoned trappers, even military teams, fan out across the marshes, headlamps flashing, snake hooks in hand. In 2025, the contest drew a record 934 participants from 30 states and Canada. The energy is part festival, part high-stakes competition. $25,000 in prize money on the line, with the top hunter, Taylor Stanberry, hauling in 60 pythons and claiming the $10,000 grand prize. The numbers are impressive. 294 snakes removed in just 10 days, the largest single-event tally so far. Each catch is logged, weighed, and photographed, then broadcast on social media as proof that the fight is on. But the spectacle hides a stubborn reality. Even at record pace, the challenge's total barely dents the population. With estimates running as high as 300,000 wild pythons, the math is unforgiving. For every snake caught, dozens more slip through the sawgrass, unseen and undisturbed. The vastness of the Everglades, the snakes' camouflage, and their nocturnal habits make detection a game of chance. Most participants leave empty-handed. Some never see a python at all. Beyond the competitions, Florida has built a toolkit of tactics. Paid contractors sweep levees and canals, logging thousands of hours for every few hundred captures. Detector dogs nose through marsh edges, sometimes finding a hidden snake where humans miss. Drones and night vision gear scan the waterlogged prairies, but the snakes remain elusive. Public reporting apps like I've Got One flood agencies with tips, but most turn up false alarms, sticks mistaken for snakes, or old skins left behind. One breakthrough, however, comes not from technology, but from the snakes themselves. Ian Bartoszek, a field biologist with the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, pioneered the use of scout snakes, radio-tagged male pythons released back into the wild. These living trackers lead researchers straight to breeding females, sometimes uncovering entire nests with dozens of eggs. Bartoszek's team now tracks over 40 snakes across 200 square miles, using GPS signals to stage targeted removals. On a good day, a single nest bust can yield more biomass than weeks of random searching. Bartoszek describes the work as tactical, not just reactive, science as pursuit, not just defense. Despite the innovation, the scale remains daunting. Since 2017, more than 23,000 pythons have been removed by all methods combined, less than 1% of the estimated wild population. Each new tool, each record-breaking hunt, is a reminder of both the determination and the limits of human effort. The python war is relentless, but the enemy is nearly invisible, multiplying faster than any one army can contain. Since 2017, more than 23,000 Burmese pythons have been pulled from Florida's wild lands. The number sounds impressive, until it's measured against the scale of the invasion. Biologists estimate the true Everglades population falls somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 snakes. That means, after years of effort, all the competitions, contractor sweeps, and technological advances have removed less than 1% of the total. For every snake caught, dozens more are likely missed. Mike Kirkland, who manages the python elimination program for the South Florida Water Management District, spends his days tracking the numbers. His team of professional hunters covers thousands of square miles, working levees, canals, and road edges. They log every capture, every nest, every mile walked or boated. Contractors are paid for their time and for every python they bring in, sometimes up to $500 for a single large snake. Even so, Kirkland admits the math is daunting. "We can take out 2,000 snakes in a good year," he says, "but with the breeding rate and the territory we're up against, it's a drop in the bucket." The challenge isn't just about manpower. Dr. Frank Mazzotti, an ecologist at the University of Florida, has spent decades studying invasive reptiles and running population models for the state. His research shows that to even begin shrinking python numbers, removals would have to exceed 10,000 snakes per year, every year, across the entire region. And that's if detection rates were perfect, which they aren't. Most pythons remain invisible, hidden deep in the sawgrass or buried in tree islands, far from roads and trails. Detection dogs, drones, and camera traps help, but the vastness of the Everglades and the python's camouflage make large-scale success nearly impossible. Scout snakes, radio-tagged males used to find breeding females, have improved the odds for some field teams. But even with these tactics, the removals are quickly outpaced by new hatchlings. The majority of eggs never get found. Public reporting apps, military teams, and leather industry partnerships have all added to the total, but the core reality remains. The population is so large and the landscape so complex that every effort to date has barely made a dent. For Kirkland and Mazzotti, the lesson is clear. Hunting alone will not solve the problem. The python war has become a numbers game that Florida can't win by removal alone. The hope for the Everglades now rests on finding new strategies, ones that don't just chase snakes, but start to rebuild the balance that was lost. A new threat has taken hold in Florida's wetlands, one that can't be tracked with cameras or caught in a sweep. The snake lungworm, Rhyliatiella orientalis, arrived quietly with the Burmese python and now infects at least 18 native snake species. This parasite, native to Southeast Asia, was first detected in Florida snakes in 2012. Since then, its range has expanded rapidly, reaching at least 34 counties, from Miami-Dade in the south all the way to St. Johns County in the north. The lungworm's life cycle is complex, moving from snake to cockroach to frog or lizard and back again. Infected snakes shed eggs in their waste. Cockroaches and other invertebrates pick up the parasite, which then passes to frogs and lizards, common prey for native snakes. When a snake eats an infected animal, the cycle starts over. Inside the lungs, the parasite causes bleeding, pneumonia, and tissue death. Some snakes struggle to breathe, lose weight, or die from severe infections. Necropsies have found dozens of lungworms embedded in a single animal's lungs, leaving behind dark, necrotic patches and signs of sepsis. No part of the ecosystem is untouched. Field surveys show the parasite in water snakes, king snakes, rattlesnakes, and even the threatened eastern indigo. The spread is relentless, fueled by warm, humid conditions that favor both the parasite and its hosts. Surveillance gaps remain. Most pet snakes aren't screened, and regulatory oversight is weak. With every new county added to the map, the risk grows, complicating restoration and raising urgent questions about how far the damage will reach. Among the species threatened by the python invasion and its stowaway parasite, the Florida cottonmouth stands out for reasons scientists still puzzle over. While water snakes, king snakes, and even the threatened eastern indigo show clear signs of lungworm infection, bleeding, pneumonia, and in some cases, death, cottonmouths often appear outwardly healthy. Necropsies sometimes reveal parasites in their lungs, but the surrounding tissue shows less damage than expected. In field surveys, cottonmouth populations have not crashed the way others have, and individuals rarely display the labored breathing or wasting seen in infected rattlesnakes or garter snakes. Researchers have floated several theories. One possibility lies in the cottonmouth's immune system. Some suggest these snakes may recognize and fight off pentastomy parasites more effectively, limiting their growth or impact. Others point to behavior. Cottonmouths hunt in different habitats, or may eat fewer infected frogs and lizards, reducing their exposure. Genetic studies are underway, comparing cottonmouths to more vulnerable species, searching for inherited resistance or unique physiological defenses. So far, no single explanation fits all the evidence. The cottonmouth's resilience remains a scientific mystery, a rare bright spot in an otherwise grim disease story. For biologists, it raises a tantalizing question. Could understanding this resistance offer a blueprint for protecting other native snakes? The answer is still out of reach, but the search continues as ecologists and veterinarians collect samples, run experiments, and piece together the biology of survival in a landscape transformed by invasion. When wildlife managers first announced plans to reintroduce eastern indigo snakes into Florida's battered wetlands, the response was swift and often scornful. Headlines called it a Hail Mary, restoring a threatened native snake to fight an invader that had already rewritten the food web. Critics saw the idea as wishful thinking, a symbolic gesture at best. But beneath the skepticism lay a species built for the job in ways few appreciated. The eastern indigo snake is the longest native snake in North America, reaching lengths of up to 9 feet. Deep blue-black in color, it moves with a calm confidence, rarely striking even when disturbed. Unlike the invasive python, the indigo is non-venomous. But what sets it apart is its appetite and its armor. Indigo snakes are one of the few native species that regularly eat other snakes, including venomous rattlesnakes. Laboratory studies and field observations confirm that indigos are immune to rattlesnake venom, allowing them to hunt and consume prey that would kill most other predators. In the wild, an adult indigo will swallow small cottonmouths, copperheads, and even young pythons whole, using powerful jaws and a relentless grip. Their history is tightly tied to the landscape. Indigos depend on the deep, winding burrows of gopher tortoises for shelter from fire and cold, using these underground networks as both refuge and hunting ground. But decades of habitat loss, especially the decline of longleaf pine forests and the tortoises themselves, pushed the indigo to the brink. By 1978, it was listed as a threatened species, its range reduced by nearly 97%. For scientists, the logic of the reintroduction is simple. Restore the habitat, bring back the indigo, and let a native predator do what it evolved to do. Still, doubts persist. Can a snake, even one 9 feet long, really put pressure on a population of pythons numbering in the hundreds of thousands? The answer depends on more than numbers. It depends on restoring the web of relationships that once kept these wetlands alive. The southeastern United States once held a vast, unbroken forest of longleaf pine, an ancient ecosystem stretching nearly 90 million acres from Virginia to Texas. Today, less than 3% of that original expanse remains. In Florida, the story is especially stark. Decades of logging, agriculture, and urban growth have shrunk the state's longleaf pine forests to scattered fragments. By 2023, only about 800,000 acres survive in Florida, and even fewer patches still support the full diversity of life that once thrived beneath the pines. This loss is more than a matter of trees. The longleaf pine ecosystem is a tapestry of open woodlands, wiregrass, and sandy soils, shaped by fire and home to hundreds of species found nowhere else. Gopher tortoises dig sprawling burrows, providing shelter for dozens of animals, including the eastern indigo snake, which depends on these underground refuges for survival. Without healthy longleaf forests, the indigo's return is impossible. Restoration efforts now focus on bringing back not just the trees, but the living processes that keep this habitat alive. Land managers use prescribed burns to mimic natural fire cycles, clear invasive plants, and replant native grasses. Projects at places like Apalachicola National Forest and Nokuse Plantation are reconnecting fragments, restoring gopher tortoise burrows, and rebuilding the foundation for wildlife to return. Each acre recovered is a step toward repairing the food web, setting the stage for native predators like the indigo snake to reclaim their role in the landscape. Predators in Florida's wildlands have not vanished quietly. In recent years, biologists and trail cameras have begun to capture rare but astonishing scenes. Native hunters fighting back against the python invasion. One striking example comes from Naples in 2023. A bobcat, lean and wary, stumbles upon a freshly laid python nest. The mother, known to researchers as Loki, thanks to her radio tag, has just left the eggs unattended. The bobcat circles, sniffs, and then, in a flurry of claws and teeth, attacks. Loki returns to defend her clutch, but the confrontation is brief and brutal. The bobcat kills the python, then drags the eggs away, devouring them one by one. For the first time, scientists document this on video, evidence that some native predators are learning to outwit a foe once thought untouchable. Other encounters hint at a growing resistance. Alligators have been seen ambushing young pythons along canal banks, while Florida panthers occasionally prey on juveniles they find in the undergrowth. Eastern indigo snakes, reintroduced to restored pine savannas, have been tracked swallowing hatchling pythons whole. Each of these events is rare, but together they signal a shift. The Everglades food web, battered but not broken, is beginning to adapt. Native predators are not just surviving, they are learning, experimenting, and sometimes winning. For wildlife managers and local communities, these moments offer more than scientific curiosity. They are signs of resilience, proof that the ecosystem is not beyond help. The image of a bobcat dragging away a python's eggs has become a symbol of hope, shared widely among researchers and conservationists. Nature, given time and space, can push back, even against an army of invaders. In the autumn of 2023, field biologists in North Florida made a discovery that had once seemed out of reach. Deep inside a restored longleaf pine savanna, a cluster of wild-born eastern indigo snake hatchlings, sleek, blue-black, and barely longer than a pencil, was found emerging from a gopher tortoise burrow. Each neonate was weighed, measured, and photographed, then released back to the safety of the sand. Genetic samples confirmed what scientists had hoped. These were the first documented indigos born in the wild from reintroduced parents, proof that the species was not just surviving, but reproducing on its own. This milestone didn't happen in isolation. Years of careful habitat restoration, prescribed burns, and burrow monitoring had set the stage. A female indigo, tagged and released in 2019, was still thriving nearby, her presence a sign of year-over-year survival. Field teams, working with the Orion Center for Indigo Conservation, tracked over a dozen earlier releases, with at least 19 individuals re-sighted in the wild. Some males now measured over 6 feet, strong enough to compete for territory and mates. Momentum is building beyond Florida's borders. In 2025, Alabama conservationists released 44 more indigo snakes into Conacoe National Forest, bringing the total number of reintroduced indigos across the southeast to over 500. These efforts are not just symbolic. Each new release, each wild hatchling, is a data point in a growing record of ecological recovery, a signal that, with the right groundwork, lost predators can reclaim their place in the food web. By 2025, more than 500 eastern indigo snakes have been reintroduced to restored habitats across Florida and Alabama, a response rooted in decades of wildlife loss. Verified field surveys show raccoon and opossum populations in some Everglades regions have dropped by over 98% since the Burmese python established itself after Hurricane Andrew in 1992. Conventional removal methods, including public hunts and advanced tracking, have managed to eliminate less than 1% of the python population, underscoring the scale of the challenge. Yet, the appearance of wild-born indigo hatchlings in North Florida in 2023 marks a measurable sign of ecosystem resilience. The longleaf pine ecosystem, Once 90 million acres, now just 3% of that, remains critical to these efforts. Unanswered questions persist. Will indigos form self-sustaining populations, and can native species withstand the spread of the snake lungworm? The evidence is clear. Restoring balance requires more than eradication. Lasting change is possible only through a combination of science, habitat recovery, and targeted predator restoration.